The secrets we hold can shape our lives in unimaginable ways. When Mr. Thompson's wife gives birth to twins, one with fair skin and the other with deep brown skin, questions arise that threaten to unravel their family. As whispers of doubt echo through their community, Mr. Thompson finds himself faced with a choice: confront the painful truth or allow societal expectations to dictate his family's fate. In this gripping tale, the bonds of love and loyalty will be tested like never before. In the grand halls of the Thompson estate, joy erupted as Elizabeth gave birth to twins. The air was thick with celebration, laughter echoing off the ornate walls, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the room. Mr. Thompson, proud and beaming, cradled his newborn children: Henry, with his fair skin and bright blue eyes, and Clara, whose dark complexion caught the light in a way that turned heads. Each child was a miracle, yet their stark differences stirred an undercurrent of tension that would soon surface. As the days turned into weeks, that initial joy began to twist into confusion. Friends and family cooed over the twins, their admiration laced with an unspoken curiosity. Mr. Thompson found himself smiling through clenched teeth, forcing laughter that felt hollow. Every time he looked at Clara, a knot tightened in his stomach. The whispers started softly, a murmur among the townsfolk. How could both children come from the same mother? His mind raced, spiraling into a whirlwind of jealousy and suspicion. The image of Elizabeth, radiant in her maternal glow, morphed into something darker. Was she unfaithful? Was he raising a child that wasn't truly his? The laughter of the nursery, once a melody of happiness, transformed into a haunting echo of doubt that reverberated through the halls. The shadows of his insecurities crept into every corner of his mind. He began to scrutinize Elizabeth's every move, searching for signs of betrayal. The way she lovingly brushed Clara's hair or smiled at her with such warmth ignited a fire of rage within him. How could she look at another man's child with such affection? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Mr. Thompson sat alone in his study, a glass of whiskey forgotten in his hand. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the walls, mirroring the growing darkness in his heart. He replayed the moments of their life together, their wedding vows, their dreams, and the promise of a family. But now, all he felt was betrayal. Driven by a mix of dread and desperation, he stormed into the nursery where Elizabeth sat rocking Clara, humming a lullaby. The sight of her, with the soft glow of the moonlight illuminating her face, only fueled his anger. "Tell me the truth," he shouted, his voice echoing in the small room, startling both Elizabeth and the sleeping Henry. "What do you hide?" Elizabeth looked up, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. "What are you talking about, William?" she stammered, her voice trembling as she cradled Clara closer to her chest, as if to shield her from the storm brewing in her husband's heart. "Don't play innocent with me," he snapped, stepping closer, his fists clenched at his sides. "You know what I mean. How could both these children come from you? They are not the same." The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Elizabeth's face fell, the joy of motherhood replaced by a look of hurt and disbelief. "William, how could you think that? They are our children." Her voice quivered, a mixture of anger and pain spilling forth. But Mr. Thompson's mind was made up. Suspicion had taken root and was growing wild, choking out any semblance of trust. As he stood there, his heart pounding, he realized that this confrontation was only the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel the very fabric of their family. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere in the Thompson household shifted dramatically. What once was a sanctuary filled with laughter and love now felt like a battleground, the walls echoing with unspoken accusations and simmering resentment. Each morning, Mr. Thompson would rise early, his heart heavy with the weight of his suspicions. He observed Elizabeth as she tended to the twins, her nurturing spirit casting a stark contrast to the turmoil roiling within him. The twins, with their innocent laughter and playful antics, were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their father's heart. Henry, with his bright blue eyes and fair skin, resembled Mr. Thompson in so many ways, while Clara, with her deep brown skin and soulful gaze, seemed to embody the very essence of Elizabeth. This stark difference fueled a growing obsession in Mr. Thompson, turning his love for his children into a tangled web of doubt. As the days passed, Mr. Thompson found himself stuck in a cycle of suspicion and dread. Friends and family began to notice the change in him, their smiles feeling forced, their conversations tinged with a cautious curiosity. Whispers of doubt floated through the air like autumn leaves, settling in the minds of those who had once celebrated the Thompson family with open arms. "Have you seen the children?" they would say, exchanging knowing glances. "It's odd, isn't it?" Unbeknownst to him, the townsfolk were piecing together their own narratives, fueled by the rumors that had begun to swirl around the Thompson estate. Mr. Thompson remained mostly oblivious to the gossip, fixating instead on the doubts that plagued him. He found himself scrutinizing every moment of Elizabeth's interactions with Clara, replaying conversations in his mind, searching for any hint of deception. The laughter that once filled their home felt like a taunt, a reminder of the secrets he feared she held. One particularly restless evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows. Across the room, Mr. Thompson found himself staring at a family portrait hanging above the fireplace. In it, they were all smiles, Elizabeth, radiant and beautiful, with Henry and Clara cradled in her arms. The image felt foreign now, a reminder of a life he no longer understood. What had changed? The question echoed in his mind, and he could feel the chasm between him and Elizabeth widening, threatening to swallow them whole. Driven by a mix of dread and desperation, he decided to confront Elizabeth again. The twins were asleep, their gentle breaths a soothing reminder of innocence, but that night Mr. Thompson's heart was anything but calm. He found Elizabeth in the kitchen, preparing a late-night snack, her movements graceful and serene. Yet the sight only fueled his anger. The kitchen, once a place of warmth and togetherness, became a battleground where he would lay bare his fears. "Elizabeth, we need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. She turned, surprise flickering in her eyes. "What is it, William?" "I can't keep pretending everything is normal," he replied, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "I need you to tell me the truth. Who is the real father of Clara?" The question hung heavy in the air, charged with accusation. Elizabeth's expression shifted from surprise to hurt, and just for a moment, Mr. Thompson saw the pain he was causing. "How can you ask me that? They are both our children." Her voice trembled, the anguish in her eyes piercing through his anger. "Then why does it feel like you're hiding something from me?" His voice rose, filled with frustration and desperation. "It doesn't make sense, Elizabeth. I need to know." As the tension escalated, Elizabeth's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You think I would betray you?" she whispered, hurt lacing her voice. "You think I would give my heart to someone else?" "I don't know what to think anymore," he shouted, slamming his fist against the counter, the sound reverberating through the house and startling the twins awake. Henry began to cry, a sound that echoed his own turmoil while Clara stirred, sensing the disruption. For a moment, silence engulfed them, the air thick with unspoken words. Elizabeth took a step back, her expression a mix of disbelief and sorrow. "You are breaking my heart, William. I thought we were in this together." But Mr. Thompson felt the walls closing in, the weight of uncertainty suffocating him. "Maybe we're not as together as you think." With that, he turned and stormed out, leaving Elizabeth standing there, her heart shattered, fear and confusion swirling in her chest. The next day, the sun rose on a house divided, the warmth of the morning light unable to penetrate the chill that had settled in their home. Mr. Thompson avoided Elizabeth, retreating into his study where he pored over family records and histories, desperate for some sign, some clue that would justify his growing paranoia. He became a ghost in his own house, haunting the corners and avoiding the very people who had once brought him joy. As he delved deeper into his research, he stumbled upon stories of other families torn apart by secrets. Each tale felt like a mirror reflecting his own fears back at him, amplifying his sense of dread. The whispers outside grew louder. Friends began to question Elizabeth's fidelity, while Mr. Thompson's uncertainty morphed into anger. The once vibrant home now felt like a cage, each day a reminder of the secrets lurking just beneath the surface, threatening to unravel everything they had built together. In the evenings, the twins would play quietly in their room, unaware of the tension that filled the house. Elizabeth would often steal glances at the door, longing for a moment of connection with her husband, but each time she approached, he would retreat further into his shell. The chasm between them widened, and with each passing day their love was overshadowed by a growing storm of doubt and suspicion. As autumn settled over the Thompson estate, the air grew crisp and the leaves turned fiery shades of orange and red. Yet within the walls of their home, a storm of a different kind was brewing, one that threatened to rip apart the very fabric of their family. The once harmonious household had become a battleground of silent wars, with Elizabeth and William locked in an emotional struggle that seemed to have no resolution in sight. Mr. Thompson spent countless hours in his study, poring over family documents and town records, searching for a thread that might unravel the tangled web of his doubts. The flickering candlelight illuminated dusty tomes and worn letters, but no answers emerged to quell his growing anxiety. Each passing day felt heavier, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. He could hear the whispers of the townsfolk in his mind, their judgmental eyes scrutinizing him as if he were the villain in a tragedy. Meanwhile, Elizabeth busied herself with the twins, pouring her love and energy into their care, trying to drown out the hurt that William's accusations had inflicted. Every coo and giggle that echoed in the nursery was a reminder of the innocence that surrounded her. Yet every time Clara looked up at her with those big brown eyes, Elizabeth's heart twisted with a pang of sorrow. She longed to reach out to William, to share the joys and challenges of parenthood, but fear held her back. She felt trapped in a cycle of doubt and despair, unsure how to bridge the widening gulf between them. The atmosphere in the house grew increasingly tense. William's moods were unpredictable, oscillating between anger and brooding silence, and Elizabeth found herself walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate his reactions. The twins sensed the change, their giggles fading into quiet observations of their parents' strained interactions. In the evenings, as they gathered, around the dinner table, the air was thick with unspoken words. Elizabeth would serve the meal, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the dishes in front of William, who would eat mechanically, his eyes distant and unfocused. One chilly evening, as the wind howled outside and rattled the windows, Elizabeth decided to confront the growing tension head-on. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation that could either heal their fractured relationship or push them further apart. With the twins settled into their cribs, she knocked on the door of William's study. "William, can we talk?" she called softly, her heart racing. "Not now, Elizabeth," he replied, his voice strained and distant, laced with irritation. "Please," she pleaded, pushing the door open slightly. "We can't keep living like this. It's tearing us apart." He looked up from the papers strewn across his desk, his face a mask of frustration and sorrow. "What do you want me to say? That I'm wrong? That everything is fine? I can't do that, Elizabeth. I need to know the truth. The truth is that I love you, and I love our children. That's all that matters," she exclaimed, her voice rising in desperation. "Clara is yours, just as much as Henry is. Can't you see that?" William stood, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "But how can I trust that? You've given me no reason to believe it. You're hiding something from me, and every day that goes by, I'm more convinced that I'm right." Elizabeth felt her heart shatter at his words. You're pushing me away, William. This isn't just about Clara anymore. It's about us. Don't you see that?" For a moment, silence hung in the air, thick with tension. William's gaze softened and he looked away, as if the weight of his accusations had finally begun to wear on him. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered, the vulnerability breaking through his hardened exterior. "Then let me in," she urged, her voice softer now, filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. "Let's face this together. We can figure it out. Please, just trust me." But even as she spoke, doubt flickered in William's eyes. He shook his head, retreating further into his defenses. "I don't know if I can." Disheartened, Elizabeth turned away, feeling the tears prick her eyes. She left the room, feeling more alone than ever. As she walked down the dimly lit hallway, the shadows seemed to stretch out, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She could hear the soft murmurs of the twins from their room, and she paused, taking a moment to gather herself. That night, as she lay in bed, she could hear the wind howling outside, mirroring the storm brewing in her heart. She longed for the days when love and trust filled their home, but now it felt as if they were teetering on the brink of a precipice. Each day brought new challenges, and the whispers of doubt continued to swirl around them, threatening to engulf everything they had built together. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight broke through the curtains, Elizabeth made a decision. She would not let the shadows of doubt dictate their lives any longer. With a renewed sense of determination, she resolved to confront the whispers head-on, not just with William, but with the townsfolk who had begun to question their family's integrity. "William," she said as he poured himself a cup of coffee, his eyes still clouded with suspicion, "I want to hold a gathering, an open invitation for our friends and family to come and see our children. Let them see the love we have for our family." He looked up, surprise flashing across his face. "You think that will change anything?" "It's worth a try," she replied, her voice steady. "If we can prove that our family is whole, maybe the doubts will fade. We need to face this together." William paused, his brow furrowing as he considered her words. The idea of inviting others into their home felt daunting, but he could see the determination in Elizabeth's eyes. Perhaps it was time to confront the storm, to face the doubts and fears head-on. "All right," he finally said, his voice softer. "Let's do it." As they began to make plans for the gathering, Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. They discussed the details together, from the guest list to the food they would serve. Elizabeth suggested a potluck, encouraging friends and family to bring their favorite dishes. It felt like a small step, but it was a step toward rebuilding trust and community. They envisioned the twins playing with their cousins, laughter filling the air, and the warmth of family wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. But deep down, the shadows still loomed large, and Elizabeth knew that the battle for their family was far from over. As the day of the gathering approached, anxiety gnawed at her. What if the whispers didn't fade? What if the doubts only grew louder? She tried to push these thoughts aside, focusing instead on the preparations. On the day of the gathering, the sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow over the estate. Elizabeth and William worked side by side, setting up tables in the backyard, hanging lanterns and arranging flowers. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, but beneath the surface, tension still simmered. Elizabeth could feel William's unease as they welcomed their guests. As friends and family arrived, Elizabeth put on a brave face, greeting each person with a smile, but she could sense the undercurrents of speculation in their eyes. Conversations flowed, laughter echoed, and for a brief moment she felt a glimmer of hope. Children ran around the yard, their innocence a stark contrast to the heaviness that loomed over their parents. But as the evening wore on, Elizabeth caught snippets of conversation that pierced her heart. "Have you seen how Clara looks?" one neighbor whispered to another. "It's quite unusual." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, dampening the joy of the gathering. William noticed, too, his jaw tightening as he overheard the hushed conversations. The doubts he had tried to suppress began to resurface, and he felt his resolve waver. The evening that was meant to unite them now felt like a stage for their failures, exposing the fractures in their relationship for all to see. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Elizabeth realized that the storm they had hoped to weather together was far from over. The doubts that had plagued them were still there, lurking in the shadows, and she knew that the battle for their love and family would require more than a gathering. It would demand honesty, vulnerability, and the courage to face their fears head-on. The day of the gathering dawned bright and clear, with the sun spilling golden light across the Thompson estate. Elizabeth awoke early, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The preparations had consumed her thoughts for days, and she had poured her heart into every detail, hoping to create an atmosphere of warmth and acceptance that would counter the doubts lingering in their lives. As she moved through the house, she could hear the soft sounds of the twins waking up, their laughter echoing through the halls like a sweet melody. She found them in their cribs, their faces lighting up with joy as she approached. "Good morning, my loves," she cooed, lifting Clara into her arms, feeling the warmth of her daughter's small body against her chest. Henry, ever the curious one, reached for her, and she scooped him up too, cradling both children close. The simple act of holding them felt like a protective shield against the outside world. "Today is a special day," she told them, her voice filled with optimism. "We're having all our friends and family over to celebrate our beautiful family." The twins gurgled in excitement, their innocence and joy providing a much-needed balm for her anxious heart. She gazed at their cherubic faces, marveling at how they were the embodiment of love that was pure and unconditional. William emerged from their bedroom, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He looked refreshed, but Elizabeth could see the shadows of uncertainty still clinging to him. "Are you ready for today?" she asked, trying to gauge his mood. "I guess so," he replied, his tone non-committal, a hint of apprehension threading through his words. "I just hope this works." "Trust me," Elizabeth urged, squeezing his hand. "We can show everyone that we're a family, that we love each other and our children. That's what matters." She wanted him to feel the same hope she felt, but she could sense the weight of his worries still hovering in the air. As the morning unfolded, they worked side by side, transforming their backyard into a welcoming space. Colorful tablecloths adorned the garden tables, and fragrant flowers filled vases that Elizabeth had arranged with care. The scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, mingling with the crispness of the autumn breeze. It felt like a celebration, a chance to reclaim their narrative amidst the whispers that had threatened to drown them. As the guests began to arrive, Elizabeth greeted each one with a smile, her heart racing at the thought of their reactions. Friends from their past, neighbors and family members filled the yard, laughter mingling with the sound of children playing. But as she watched the interactions unfold, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in her stomach. William stood at the edge of the gathering, watching the scene unfold with a guarded expression. Elizabeth could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he crossed his arms as if to shield himself from the scrutiny of their guests. She knew he was still wrestling with his doubts, and the whispers that had circulated around town echoed in his mind. "Hey, why don't we gather everyone for a toast?" Elizabeth suggested to William, trying to inject some positivity into the air. "It will be a good way to bring everyone together." William nodded slowly, albeit reluctantly. "All right, let's do it." As they clinked glasses, Elizabeth felt a surge of hope. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice ringing clear over the gathering. "Today is about celebrating our family, our love, and the bonds that tie us together. We may face challenges, but together we can overcome anything." The guests responded with cheers, raising their glasses in support. But in the back of her mind, Elizabeth could sense the skepticism lingering in the air. She caught a few sideways glances and hushed whispers that made her heart race. The doubts that had plagued William were now surfacing among their friends, and she felt the weight of their scrutiny pressing down on them. "Let's enjoy the time together," William interjected, attempting to redirect the atmosphere. "There's plenty of food, and the kids are excited to play. Let's make some memories." As the afternoon wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Elizabeth noticed a group of neighbors huddled together, their voices low but their glances sharp. She felt a pang of anxiety, knowing that the whispers about Clara's paternity were likely resurfacing. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of their purpose today, to show that their family was united, that love prevailed over doubt. "Hey, can you help me with the punch?" Elizabeth asked William, trying to pull him away from the gathering crowd. She needed a moment to reconnect with him, to remind him of their united front. "Sure," he replied, though his voice was distant. As they moved towards the kitchen, she could see the tension etched on his face, the way he clenched his jaw as if bracing himself for a storm. Once, inside, she turned to him, her heart racing. "William, we can't let them get to us. We're stronger than this. Look at our children. Look at the love we have." "I know, but—" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just can't shake the feeling that everyone is judging us. It's like they're waiting for us to fail." Elizabeth stepped closer, searching his eyes for the man she loved. "We're not going to fail. We're going to show them how strong we are, how much we love each other. We can't let the doubts win." He looked at her, searching for reassurance. "What if they don't believe us? What if this doesn't change anything?" "Then we keep fighting," she replied, her voice firm. "We face it together no matter what." As they returned to the gathering, Elizabeth felt a renewed sense of determination. She was more than just a mother. She was a warrior for her family. They had created something beautiful together, and she wouldn't let anyone take that away from them. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the yard, Elizabeth's heart soared with hope. She could see the twins laughing and playing with their cousins, their joy infectious. The sound of children's laughter filled her with a sense of peace, reminding her of the love that bound their family together. But as the evening unfolded, the atmosphere grew tense. Elizabeth caught snippets of conversation that pierced her heart. "Have you seen how Clara looks?" one neighbor whispered to another. "It's quite unusual." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, dampening the joy of the gathering. William noticed too, his jaw tightening as he overheard the hushed conversations. The doubts he had tried to suppress began to resurface, and he felt his resolve waver. The evening that was meant to unite them now felt like a stage for their failures, exposing the fractures in their relationship for all to see. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, Elizabeth took a deep breath, trying to drown out the doubts that threatened to engulf them. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, filled with moments of uncertainty and fear. But as she looked around at the flickering faces of their friends and family, she felt a surge of determination. "Let's gather around the fire," she called out, trying to rally everyone's spirits. "We can share stories and roast marshmallows." The guests responded with cheers, and Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. As they settled around the fire, she began to share stories of their early days together, recounting the laughter and love that had filled their home. The warmth of the flames mirrored the warmth in her heart as she watched William relax, his tension slowly easing as he engaged with their friends. But even as they shared laughter and stories, Elizabeth could feel the undercurrents of doubt still lurking just beneath the surface. She caught a few sideways glances and hushed whispers that made her heart race. The doubts that had plagued William were now surfacing among their friends, and she felt the weight of their scrutiny pressing down on them. "Hey, let's do a toast," William suddenly suggested, standing up and raising his glass. "To family and love. We may face challenges, but we'll always stand united." The guests raised their glasses, echoing his sentiment, but Elizabeth could see the skepticism lingering in some of their eyes. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, she felt a mix of hope and dread. They were fighting against a tide of doubt, and she knew the battle was far from over. As the evening wore on, Elizabeth felt a surge of determination. They could weather this storm together, she thought. As she looked around at the flickering faces of their friends and family, she felt a renewed sense of hope. All they needed was to hold on to their love and to each other. And with that, Elizabeth turned back to the gathering, ready to face whatever came next. The days following the gathering felt like a whirlwind for Elizabeth. The initial high of hosting friends and family had quickly dissipated, replaced by the lingering tension that hung in the Thompson household like a thick fog. Although the gathering had been filled with laughter and joy, the whispers of doubt still clung to the edges of her mind, threatening to unravel the fragile peace they had fought so hard to create. William had retreated further into himself, spending long hours in his study, poring over documents and records, seemingly searching for answers that eluded him. The sight of him hunched over his desk, lost in thought, pierced Elizabeth's heart. She felt the distance growing between them, a chasm that widened with every passing day. Every time she reached out, trying to bridge the gap, he would pull away, consumed by his own thoughts and fears. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in a blaze of orange and pink, Elizabeth sat on the porch, staring at the fading light. The vibrant colors of the sky were a stark contrast to the bleakness she felt in her heart. The twins were playing in the grass, their innocent laughter a reminder of the love that still existed in their family, but it felt overshadowed by the shadows of doubt. "William," she called gently, hoping to draw him out of his thoughts. He stood at the door, reluctant to join her. "Come sit with us. It's beautiful out here." He hesitated, then slowly made his way to the porch, taking a seat beside her. The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable, a reflection of the weight they both carried. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low and heavy, "about everything, about Clara." Elizabeth's heart raced at the mention of their daughter's name. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her tone steady. "I can't shake the feeling that people are looking at her and seeing something different." "They're judging us, Elizabeth. They're judging you," he said, his words laced with worry. "I just don't want to believe that you could have hidden something from me." "William, I haven't hidden anything," she replied, her voice firm yet gentle. "Clara is our daughter, and I love her just as much as I love Henry. No one's opinion can change that." "But how can I be sure?" he pressed, his eyes searching hers for reassurance. "What if I'm wrong? What if she's not mine?" The hurt in his voice struck her like a physical blow. "You're not wrong, William. Clara is yours. Our love created her, and that is all that matters." She leaned closer, her heart aching for him. "You have to trust me. Trust us." He looked away, the conflict in his eyes evident. "Every time I see her, I see the doubts reflected in the eyes of others. It makes me question everything." His voice trembled slightly, his vulnerability raw and palpable. "Then we need to face this together," Elizabeth said, her voice steady. "We can't let the shadows of doubt dictate our lives. We need to confront these fears head-on and show everyone, ourselves included, that we are a family." William remained silent, staring out at the setting sun, lost in thought. Elizabeth reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his, hoping to draw him back into the warmth of their connection. "Let's talk to someone, a counselor or a therapist. I think it could help us both." He turned to her, surprise etched on his face. "You really think that would make a difference?" "I do," she replied earnestly. "We need to openly communicate our fears and concerns. Holding it all in is only pushing us apart. It's time to face the shadows together." After a moment of contemplation, William nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll consider it." As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth remained hopeful that their decision to seek help would bring them closer. They found a therapist who specialized in family dynamics, someone who could guide them through the murky waters of their emotions. The first session was filled with tension, but Elizabeth felt a sense of relief as they began to unpack their feelings. "Tell me about your fears," the therapist prompted, her voice calm and inviting. William shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing at Elizabeth before speaking. "I'm afraid of losing my family. I don't want to be the reason we fall apart." "You're not the reason," Elizabeth interjected softly. "We're in this together. It's the doubts and whispers that are tearing us apart, not you." The therapist nodded, encouraging William to continue. "And what do you fear most about Clara?" she asked gently. "That she isn't mine," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "That I may have been deceived, that I'm raising a child who doesn't belong to me." "That fear is valid," the therapist acknowledged. "But it's important to remember that love doesn't hinge solely on blood. What matters is the bond you share, the history you've built together as a family." Elizabeth felt a surge of hope as they continued to explore their relationship. With each session, they peeled back layers of emotion, exposing vulnerabilities that had long been buried. They learned to communicate openly, to express their fears without judgment, and to support each other through the storms of uncertainty. As the therapy sessions progressed, Elizabeth noticed subtle changes in William. He began to engage more with the twins, his laughter returning as he played with them in the yard. The shadows that had haunted him started to lift, replaced by moments of joy and connection. Yet the lingering doubts still crept into their lives, often uninvited. One afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, watching the twins play, Elizabeth turned to William, her heart full of gratitude. "I'm so proud of how far we've come. You're making an effort, and it shows." He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "I just wish I could completely shake off the doubts. I want to be the father Clara deserves." "You are, William," Elizabeth reassured him. "Every day you choose to love and support our family, you prove that. We may still face challenges, but we're stronger together." Just then, a neighbor, Mrs. Davis, approached, her expression hesitant. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, looking between them. "I just wanted to check in. I've heard about the therapy sessions, and I think it's wonderful that you're seeking help." "Thank you," Elizabeth replied, her heart racing at the thought of being scrutinized. "We're just trying to work through some things." Mrs. Davis nodded, though her eyes betrayed her skepticism. "I think it's great to address issues, but I hope you know that some people will always talk, no matter what." "Let them talk," William said, surprising both Elizabeth and Mrs. Davis. "We're doing what's best for our family, and that's all that matters." Mrs. Davis looked taken aback by his assertiveness, but then she smiled politely, excusing herself as she walked away. Elizabeth watched her go, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. William's newfound confidence was a step in the right direction, but she knew they still had a long way to go. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Elizabeth felt a sense of normalcy returning to their lives. The twins shared their adventures of the day, animatedly recounting how they had played with butterflies and chased each other around the yard. Elizabeth encouraged their storytelling, laughing along with them as they made silly faces and exaggerated gestures. But just as she felt the warmth of their family bond enveloping her, William's expression darkened. He sat at the table, his fork idly pushing the food around, his plate, a frown etched on his brow. Elizabeth's heart sank as she recognized the familiar signs of his internal struggle. "William, is everything okay?" she asked gently, reaching out to touch his hand. He looked up, his eyes clouded with unease. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired," he replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe you need a break," Elizabeth suggested, her concern deepening. "You've been working so hard lately. Let's plan a day out, just the three of us. A picnic at the park, some fresh air, and time together." He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That sounds nice." Later that evening, after the twins were tucked into bed, Elizabeth found William in the living room, staring into the fireplace. She could see the flickering flames reflecting in his eyes, and she felt a pang of longing to reach him. "Want to talk?" she asked softly, settling next to him on the couch. "I don't know, Elizabeth," he replied, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "I just keep thinking about what everyone else thinks. It's hard to ignore." "Then let's confront it," she urged, her heart racing. "What if we invite our closest friends over for dinner? We can show them that we're a family, that we're strong. We need to stand together against the whispers." William looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You really think that will help?" "I do," she replied, her voice steady and unwavering. "It's time to take control of our narrative. We can't let the shadows of doubt define us. We need to show our friends the truth of our family." He looked away, contemplating her words. "All right, let's do it," he said finally, though a hint of apprehension still lingered in his tone. As the days passed, they prepared for their friend's visit, transforming their home into a welcoming space. Elizabeth cooked their favorite meals, filling the house with the comforting aromas of home-cooked dishes. She could feel the butterflies of anticipation in her stomach, hoping that this gathering would help to dispel the shadows that had loomed over them for so long. On the evening of the dinner, as the doorbell rang and their friends arrived, Elizabeth felt a rush of excitement mixed with anxiety. She greeted each guest warmly, ushering them into the living room where laughter and stories flowed freely. William joined in, his laughter echoing in the air, and Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. As they sat down to dinner, Elizabeth could see the camaraderie and warmth enveloping them. She watched as William engaged with their friends, sharing jokes and stories, and for a moment it felt like the weight of the world had lifted. But just as she began to relax, she caught a glimpse of Mrs. Davis whispering to another guest, her eyes darting towards Clara, who was happily playing with her toys nearby. A chill ran down Elizabeth's spine as she sensed the familiar tension, creeping back in. "Let's raise a toast," Elizabeth called out, determined to steer the evening back toward positivity. "To friendship, family, and love. May we always support one another." Everyone raised their glasses, and Elizabeth felt a swell of warmth as they all echoed her sentiment. But as the evening progressed, she could feel William's unease returning. He sat stiffly in his chair, his laughter less frequent, and she knew that the shadows of doubt were still lurking at the edges of his mind. As dessert was served, Elizabeth decided to take a bold step. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady but her heart racing. "I know there have been whispers and doubts about our family, and I want you to know how much your support means to us." The room fell silent, and Elizabeth could feel the weight of their gazes. "Clara is our daughter. William and I love her, and we're doing our best to create a loving home for both her and Henry. We hope you can see that." William's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment the tension hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. Then one of their friends, Mark, spoke up. "We know you two are a great couple and wonderful parents. We're here for you, no matter what." "Yes, we are," another friend chimed in, nodding in agreement. "You've always been there for us. We want to support you in any way we can." Elizabeth felt a rush of gratitude wash over her. The warmth of their support enveloped her, and she could see the tension in William's shoulders begin to ease. As the night wore on, the atmosphere lightened, and laughter returned to the room. They played games, shared stories, and reminisced about old times, and Elizabeth watched as William finally began to relax, his laughter mingling with theirs. But as the evening came to a close, Elizabeth couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still lingering, just out of sight. She knew they had taken a step forward, but they still had a long way to go. Later that night, as they lay in bed, William turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for tonight," he said quietly. "It meant a lot to me." "I'm glad," she replied, snuggling closer. "We need to keep doing this. We need to keep facing our fears together." He nodded, but a shadow crossed his face. "I just wish I could silence the doubts completely." Elizabeth took a deep breath, her heart swelling with determination. "We can't control what others think, but we can control how we respond. We'll keep fighting for our family, no matter what." As they drifted off to sleep, Elizabeth felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. They had faced one challenge tonight, but she knew there would be more. The whispers would return, and the shadows would loom larger at times. But as long as they stood together, she believed they could face anything that came their way. The weeks following the dinner party felt transformative for the Thompson family. With every therapy session, Elizabeth and William peeled back layers of fear and doubt that had long obscured their relationship. They grew more attuned to each other's feelings, learning to communicate openly and honestly. It was a journey fraught with vulnerability, but it was also liberating. As spring approached, the days grew longer, and the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Elizabeth felt a sense of renewal in her heart, a budding hope that began to blossom. She spent afternoons in the garden with the twins, teaching them the names of the flowers and showing them how to plant seeds. Each day they watched as new life emerged from the earth, a metaphor for their own healing journey. "Look, Mommy, this one's a daffodil," Clara exclaimed one sunny afternoon, her tiny fingers brushing the delicate petals. "Yes, sweetheart, daffodils are so beautiful," Elizabeth replied, her heart swelling with pride. "They remind us that spring always comes after winter, just like how we're growing and healing as a family." William, who had been digging nearby, paused to listen. "You're right, Clara. Just like our family, we're blooming together," he said, a smile breaking through his previously furrowed brow. Elizabeth felt a warmth at seeing him connect not only with their daughter, but also with the metaphor of renewal they were cultivating together. However, despite the sunshine and growth in their family life, the whispers that had haunted them were not entirely silenced. The community buzzed with curiosity, and Elizabeth could sense the scrutiny whenever they ventured out. She had learned to ignore the sideways glances and hushed conversations, but she knew that William still struggled with the weight of their neighbors' opinions. One evening, as they settled down for dinner, Elizabeth noticed that William's usual light-heartedness had dimmed. He pushed his food around his plate, a frown creasing his brow. Clara and Henry babbled happily, unaware of the tension that hung in the air. "What's wrong, love?" Elizabeth asked, placing her fork down and leaning closer to him. "Nothing," he replied, but the tightness in his voice told her otherwise. "William," she pressed gently, "it's okay to talk about it. We're in this together." He sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I just keep thinking about what everyone must be saying about us. About Clara." Elizabeth felt a familiar ache in her chest. "We've talked about this. Clara is our daughter, and no one can take that away from us. We can't let their opinions dictate our happiness." "I know," he said, his voice laced with defeat. "But sometimes it just feels overwhelming. I want to be strong for you and the kids, but the doubts creep back in despite everything we've worked on." Elizabeth reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. "You're not alone in this. We're a team, remember? Let's face it together." He looked into her eyes, and for a moment the shadows seemed to lift. "You're right. I just need to remind myself of that." The next day, Elizabeth decided to take a proactive step. She organized a small gathering at their home, inviting a few close friends from the neighborhood who had stood by them through thick and thin. It was time to reclaim their narrative, to create an environment where they could openly discuss their feelings and reinforce their bond. As the day approached, Elizabeth poured her energy into the preparations. She baked her signature chocolate chip cookies, arranged fresh flowers, and set the table with care. Every detail mattered, and she wanted to create a warm environment that reflected the love they had for each other and their friends. When the guests arrived, the atmosphere was warm and inviting. Laughter filled the air, and Elizabeth felt a sense of belonging wash over her. "I'm so glad you all could make it," she exclaimed, greeting each guest with a smile. William stood beside her, his demeanor relaxed, and Elizabeth could see the joy in his eyes as they welcomed familiar faces into their home. "Thanks for inviting us," Mark said, clapping William on the back as he stepped inside. "It's good to see you both." "Yeah, it feels like ages since we all got together," another friend chimed in, giving Clara a playful tickle that sent her into fits of giggles. As the evening unfolded, Elizabeth felt the tension begin to dissolve. They shared stories, reminisced about old times, and engaged in light-hearted banter. William gradually loosened up, his laughter ringing out as he joined in the fun. Elizabeth watched him interact with their friends, the weight of uncertainty lifting from his shoulders, if only momentarily. But just as the night seemed to be taking a perfect turn, Elizabeth noticed Mrs. Davis standing at the edge of the gathering, her expression uncertain as she exchanged glances with another neighbor. Elizabeth's stomach twisted with anxiety, memories of past whispers flooding her mind. "Excuse me for a moment," Elizabeth said to William, her heart pounding. She approached Mrs. Davis, forcing a smile despite the unease swirling inside her. "Hi, Mrs. Davis. I'm glad you could make it." "Thank you for the invitation, Elizabeth," she replied, though her eyes darted nervously. "I just wanted to check in on you and William. I know things have been difficult." Elizabeth felt a flicker of frustration. "We're doing our best to navigate this, and we appreciate the support from our friends." Mrs. Davis nodded, but her gaze lingered on Clara, who was happily playing with some toys. "I just hope that you both can find peace with everything. The neighborhood has been a bit talkative." Elizabeth took a deep breath, steeling herself against the hurtful words that hung in the air. "I understand that people talk, but all we can do is focus on our family and the love we share. Clara is our daughter, and we're committed to raising her together." Mrs. Davis looked taken aback, perhaps surprised by Elizabeth's firmness. "Of course, Thank you for your concern, but we're okay," Elizabeth interjected, her voice steady. "We're working through things, and we appreciate your understanding." With that, she turned away, feeling the weight of the conversation settle on her shoulders. She rejoined William and their friends, determined not to let the shadows creep back into their lives. As the evening continued, Elizabeth felt a renewed sense of purpose. She engaged her friends in light conversation, steering the topic away from anything that might trigger doubt. William caught her eye, and she could see the gratitude reflected in his gaze. He knew they were in this together, facing the whispers and doubts head-on. Later, as the night wrapped up, William pulled Elizabeth aside, his expression serious. "I'm proud of you for how you handled that," he said quietly. "You stood your ground." "I had to," she replied, her heart racing. "It felt important to show that we won't be broken by their whispers. We're stronger than that." As the last of their friends departed, Elizabeth felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over her. They had taken a significant step forward, reclaiming their narrative and reinforcing their bond in the face of adversity. That night, as they lay in bed, William turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for being my rock," he said softly. "I couldn't do this without you." Elizabeth smiled, her heart swelling with love. "We're in this together. Always." As they drifted off to sleep, Elizabeth felt a sense of hope that had been absent for so long. The shadows still lurked in the corners, but they were learning to shine a light on them, to confront the doubts instead of allowing them to fester. Together, they would continue to fight, to stand firm in their love for each other and their family. Yet the following week brought unexpected challenges. Elizabeth was at the grocery store with the twins when she overheard two women discussing her family within earshot. "Did you see how Clara looks? She's so different from Henry. It's just odd," one of them whispered, her voice dripping with judgment. Elizabeth felt her heart drop, the familiar sting of hurt rising within her. She glanced at the twins, who were blissfully unaware, but the comment struck a nerve. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the progress they had made, of the strength they had cultivated together. "Mommy, can we get some apples?" Clara asked, pulling at her sleeve. "Of course, sweetheart," Elizabeth replied, forcing a smile. "Let's pick the juiciest ones." As they continued through the store, Elizabeth felt the weight of the women's words lingering in her mind. Later that evening, she shared her experience with William, who listened intently, his expression darkening at the thought of anyone judging their family. "I can't believe they would talk like that," he said, his voice tense. "It's like they're waiting for us to fail." "We can't control what others say," Elizabeth replied, her heart heavy, "but we can control how we respond. We have to keep moving forward." William nodded, but the worry still clouded his eyes. "I just don't want Clara to grow up feeling different, or unwanted. I want her to know she's loved." "She will," Elizabeth assured him. "We'll make sure she knows she's perfect just as she is. We're her parents, and our love for her is unconditional." As the week progressed, Elizabeth found herself increasingly aware of the scrutiny they faced in public. The whispers seemed to follow them, a chorus of doubt that threatened to drown out the joy they were cultivating at home. Despite this, she remained committed to their journey, reminding William of the progress they had made and encouraging him to focus on the love they shared. On a particularly sunny Saturday, they decided to take the twins to the local park. Elizabeth hoped a day outdoors would lift their spirits and provide a much-needed distraction. As they strolled through the park, the laughter of children filled the air, and Elizabeth felt a sense of peace settle over her. "Look at them play," she exclaimed, watching as Clara and Henry chased each other around the playground, their giggles ringing like music. "They're so happy." William smiled, but Elizabeth could still see the tension lurking beneath the surface of his expression. "Yeah, they are," he replied, though his tone lacked conviction. As they sat on a park bench, watching the twins play, a neighbor approached them. It was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly lady from a few houses down. "Hello, dear. What a lovely family you have," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson," Elizabeth replied, her heart lifting at the kindness. "I've heard things, you know," Mrs. Thompson continued, her expression softening. "But I believe love is what matters, not what others say. Just keep being the wonderful family you are." William straightened, visibly relaxing at the words of support. "Thank you for saying that," he replied, a genuine smile breaking through. "Of course, Clara and Henry are lucky to have such loving parents," she said before excusing herself to continue her walk. As she walked away, Elizabeth squeezed William's hand, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. "See, there are people who support us. We just need to focus on those who lift us up." He nodded, his expression softening as he watched the twins play. "You're right. We can't let the others bring us down." That evening, as they lay in bed, William turned to Elizabeth, his eyes reflecting a newfound determination. "You know, I want to do something special for the kids, something that shows them how much we love them." "What do you have in mind?" Elizabeth asked, intrigued. "I was thinking we could plan a family adventure, a day at the zoo or maybe a trip to the beach," he suggested, excitement creeping into his voice. "Just us, creating memories together." Elizabeth's heart soared at the thought. "That sounds amazing. The kids will love it. It's a wonderful way to show them our love and strengthen our bond." As they drifted off to sleep, Elizabeth felt a renewed sense of hope. The shadows still loomed, but they were learning to shine a light on them, to confront the doubts instead of allowing them to fester. Together, they would continue to fight, to stand firm in their love for each other and their family. The following week, they planned their family adventure, packing snacks, toys, and plenty of sunscreen for a day of fun in the sun. On the day of the outing, excitement buzzed in the air as they piled into the car, the twins chattering happily in the back seat. "Are we there yet?" Clara asked, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "Not yet, but we're getting close," William replied, glancing in the rearview mirror with a grin. "Just a little more traffic to navigate." As they drove, Elizabeth felt a warm glow of happiness. They were doing this together, facing the world as a united front, and she couldn't help but believe that they were on the cusp of something beautiful. When they arrived at the beach, the sight of the vast ocean and the sound of waves crashing against the shore filled them with joy. Clara and Henry raced towards the water, squealing with delight as the waves lapped at their feet. "Look, Mommy, look at the sand," Clara shouted, scooping up a handful and letting it trickle through her fingers. "Let's build a sand castle," Henry added, his eyes sparkling with excitement. As they settled into their day, Elizabeth watched as William joined the twins, his laughter mingling with theirs as they constructed elaborate sand castles adorned with seashells and seaweed. The sight of him, fully engaged and joyful, filled her heart with warmth. It was a moment of pure bliss, a reminder of the love that had brought them together in the first place. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the beach, Elizabeth felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had faced challenges, but in this moment, surrounded by the laughter of their children, they were winning the battle against the shadows. "Here, let's take a family picture," she suggested, pulling out her phone. They gathered together, arms wrapped around one another, smiles bright against the backdrop of the setting sun. "Say cheese!" Elizabeth exclaimed, and the sound of their laughter echoed across the beach as the camera clicked. As they reviewed the photo, Elizabeth felt a swell of gratitude. This was their family. Imperfect, yet so beautifully united. They had faced the doubts and whispers, and through it all they had emerged stronger, more connected. On the drive home, William reached for Elizabeth's hand, intertwining their fingers as they navigated the familiar roads. "Thank you for today," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I needed this. I think we all did." "We're just getting started," Elizabeth replied, her heart full of hope. "Together, we can face anything." As they arrived home, the night settled around them like a comforting blanket. Elizabeth felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were moving forward, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would continue to shine brightly, illuminating even the darkest shadows with their love.